I want you guys to check this out.
Wide, a drop in Democratic registration numbers. And in the battleground states, it's just as stark. Look at this. The share of registered Democrats down almost 4 points in Arizona, just since 2020. Nevada, more than 8 points. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, all of these big battlegrounds have lost Democrats in large numbers, again, just this decade. So that just tells you how tough it's going to be for Democrats to fight their way back when it comes to control of Congress or potentially the presidency down the road. It's hard to create a wave if voters are fleeing your party.
Extraordinary that Democrats have lost more than 2 million registered voters just in the past 4 years, and Republicans have gained. Rick, thank you very much.
Boom. So that's the look. That's the look right there. That is the look of a narrative, a whole story they've been feeding you for years, just slamming head first into a brick wall of reality. For years, the establishment, the media, and all of them, they've been selling you this idea of a permanent Democrat majority. And they pointed at the demographics and told their base, don't worry, the future is ours. But the numbers are brutal now because they are so undeniable that they can't just spin them or look away anymore. And that look of shock you just saw, that's not a one off. It's happening in newsrooms all over the country. And it's the slow, painful realization that a massive political realignment is happening right under their noses. And they're the last to figure it out. So, across the board, you have liberal hosts and Democrat leaders being forced to look at a brutal truth that voters are fleeing their party and key parts of their unbeatable coalition are crumbling and they are struggling. And I mean, struggling to figure out why. So, today we're going to break down the evidence they can no longer ignore and reveal the core truths they're being forced, kicking, and screaming to finally admit. So, when you look at these things, right, and we'll get to Hakeem Jeffries in a minute. When you look at these things, for years, it's all been about national polls, right? A point here, a point there. But the real story, the media, the media is just now being forced to cover, is happening on the ground. And it's the voter registration rolls that you guys just heard about in the first clip. And it's a complete disaster for the Democratic Party because let's look at the big picture. A recent, just devastating analysis of voter registration in 30 states found a massive shift between 2020 and 2024, and the Democratic Party lost 2.1 million registered voters, and at the same time, Republicans gained 2.4 million, and that is a net swing of 4.5 million voters. And that's not a rounding error, that's a political earthquake. Now, and of course, the media will try to downplay it and they'll say, oh, registration isn't a perfect predictor of elections. And okay, fine. But it is the clearest sign of where the energy is. It's the brand. And right now, the Democratic brand is toxic. And as one host on the Pod Save America podcast admitted, the situation is at its worst point in pretty much their entire history. And this isn't just some national thing. It's happening in the states that decide elections. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Democrats already always relied on a huge registration advantage there to win because in 2020 they had a lead over 500,000 voters, and then today that lead has been slashed down to just over 300,000 and their firewall is gone. So it's the same story in places like North Carolina. The Democratic advantage there is being chipped away piece by piece. In fact, in all 30 states where they can track this, Democrats lost ground to Republicans. So all 30, and that isn't an anomaly. That's a trend. That's a party in free fall, and the media had no choice to wake up to this. And the numbers are just too stark, and you can see them wrestling with it live on air, asking how did this happen? And the answer is simple. While they were busy pushing their narratives, they stopped listening to the actual concerns of normal Americans. So why is this happening? Why is the party that was supposed to rule forever now watching his own base walk away? And it's because for years the Democrats and the media have been talking about one set of issues while millions of Americans are living in a totally different reality. So before I get to the economy, let's check out what Hakeem Jeffries had to say in regards of, the whole coalition and, the redistricting war when it comes to the midterms and stuff like that.
Speaking of math, I do want to ask about a New York Times investigation showing that Democrats are losing registered voters in all 30 states that track party registration. We're putting on the screen the data. It shows altogether Democrats have lost 2.1 million voters. Republicans have gained 2.4 million. That's a deficit that you have of 4.5 million voters. Why are voters turning away from your party? What is the problem?
Most of that activity, as I understand it, has occurred in Florida and Texas. And certainly it is the case that nationally we're going to have to invest.
You see how he absorbed the simple fact that it's happening in his party, but he wants to play tit for tat and simply blame Texas and Florida. And Texas and Florida is Republican states, but they're not having the issues of their voter base being shifted because I just said that the voter base is leaving the Democratic Party and voting Republican. And those two states he mentioned are Republican. So how the hell are they happening in those states? But anyway.
More in these two red states. At the end of the day, it's also going to be important for us to continue to make clear to the American people what we stand for as Democrats. We believe in a strong floor and no ceiling. In this country, you work hard, you play by the rules. There should be no ceiling as to what success you can accomplish for yourself, for your family.
All right, let me read. I'll give you between the lines. And excuse my language. I'll just explain through the bullshit in the word solid that he about to say. Because basically he said you work hard and you play by the rules. You know what that mean? That means you play by our rules to keep us in power, and we might just help you get a leg up, but not really care about your concerns. Because if you keep us in power, I'm worrying about selfishly benefit me and the Democratic establishment. And once I get my way, by you playing by my rules, so I can stay in power, then we could forget about you and no longer worry about your concerns because I got what I want, and I gave you a little bit of what you want to string you along and basically dangle the carrot over your head and basically act like I'm here to help you, but really I'm here to be deceitful and act like I care about you until I get my way, and then I say forget you.
Family, for your children, for your grandchildren, and your community. At the same period of time, we do, as Democrats, believe in a strong floor. That's a strong floor that is anchored in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, veterans benefits, nutritional assistance, and the Affordable Care Act, the things that Republicans are actually trying to detonate. That's the difference between Republicans and Democrats, and the more we can lean into what we stand for as a party, the better off we'll be moving forward.
That's a lie. Let's start with the economy. For the last few years, all we heard is strong GDP and low unemployment. Yeah, on paper, whatever, but that's not the economy people live in. People live in an economy of insane inflation. They see it at the grocery store, they see it at the gas pump, and they really see it at the crushing cost of housing. So when you can't afford a house and when your rent is half your paycheck and your wages aren't going anywhere, and then you see some politician like Hakeem Jeffries on TV bragging about macroeconomic data, it feels like an insult because it feels completely out of touch. And even CNN's Fareed Zachariah pointed this out, saying that the Democratic leaders just failed to get how deep the anger was about people's own financial situations, and their message just wasn't landing with real life. So he keep talking about how the Republicans are trying to take away housing and affordability and all these government daddy benefits, but he's not talking about the real difference between the Democrats and the Republican is the Republican wants to give you the resources, let alone put more money in your check so you can pave the way to invest in yourself, which is self-preservation, so you can then thrive and succeed. First, get out of survival mode, then you start succeeding, then you start thriving. But the Democratic Party want to give you incentives such as EBT, which is in EBT, aka food stamps, and then give you affordable housing. But then you have all these rules to play by that he mentioned where you can't get ahead because you're so busy trying to get ahead, but you can't get too ahead because then they won't help you no more. And they'll basically pull the benefits out of the rug under you. And then you left to fend for yourself, which you'll be struggling, which is so out of touch. So what I'm saying is they failed that part that I just mentioned. They failed to take the issue of illegal crossing seriously, and it just created a huge opening for their opponents, the Republican Party. And for most people, it wasn't about being anti-immigrant. It was about wanting order and the rule of law. And when voters felt like those basic concerns when it came to safety, when it came to affordability, such as groceries and stuff that the Biden administration could have been did, and when it came to actually pouring into the communities and actually helping Americans and put more money in their pockets, to actually live the American dream and actually be able to buy a house and afford a house and actually putting more jobs in the job market and actually bringing back monies to America instead of letting jobs go out to other countries and America being abused, they didn't care about that. They kept pumping money into illegal immigrants. So when those things were dismissed, they started looking for someone else who would listen. And finally, you have public safety, while a very loud minority of activists were screaming, defund the police, the vast majority of people in the communities getting hit hard by crime wanted the exact opposite. So when you look at it, because a stunning Gallup poll from 2020 found that 81% of Black Americans wanted the police to spend the same amount of time or more time in their areas, and the party was listening to the loudest people on Twitter, not the silent majority in the actual neighborhoods they claim they represent. So you add it all up, the economy, the border, the crime, you get a party that just seemed completely out of touch. And when voters feel like you don't get their most basic day-to-day problems, they will eventually walk away. So for decades, the Democratic Party had the victory, and it was this coalition of different groups, and they thought it was a fortress. Turns out that fortress is full of cracks. The brutal truth is that the voting blocks they assumed they owned are no longer a sure thing. And let's talk about the Hispanic vote, because for years they treated it like a single um, monolithic Democratic bloc. And that assumption is now political malpractice, because while majority might still lean Democrat, the shift to Republican Party has been staggering. We saw the huge swing in 2020, and the trend has only continued. And you see it in a stunning detail in places like South Texas, where Trump made massive gains in majority Hispanic counties. And you see it in Florida, where Miami-Dade County, which is overwhelmingly Hispanic, swung hard toward Trump in 2020. This is not a blip, okay? This is the fundamental realignment, and it's driven by the same things we just talked about: the economy, security, and the feeling that the Democratic Party values just don't line up with their own, and they're voting on kitchen table issues and not the cultural wars that the media obsesses over. So we're seeing similar, though smaller, erosion with Black voters, and this is still the most loyal part of the Democratic base, because they more cater to identity politics, basically voting like people that they own color or melanin is. When it comes to Black people, what we see the men shifting over to women, they still left behind, but we got the Black men to drag the Black woman across to the finish line, because they voting with their emotions. But the shift is big enough to set off alarm bells in the party, especially with Black men, like I said. So it's a huge warning sign that they can no longer assume, the Democratic Party, that they'll get 90+% of the vote without even trying. So what's happening here? The Democratic Party is becoming a party of highly educated, um, in the rich and big cities, as Fareed Zakaria has pointed out, and they're gaining white college educated voters, but they are bleeding the worker class voters of all races who used to be the absolute backbone of their party. And this is the brutal truth that so much of the media refuses to see, and they are stuck in their own echo chamber, that they're missing the massive political shifts happening right in front of them. And if you believe it's time for an honest conversation about this stuff, and you appreciate analysis that isn't afraid to go against the official narrative, then do me a favor right now and obliterate the subscribe button, meaning hit the subscribe button and get this video a big thumbs up, because we're building a community that is here we're building a community here that is telling all about the facts and not the spin. And click that notification bell so you never miss a video. So, like I said, for years, a lot of these liberal hosts acted like gatekeepers. They told you what was important and who was winning, but the election results and these voter registration numbers have completely shattered their bubble, and the numbers are just too big to spin. And now we're getting to watch the meltdown live on air, right? So, with all that being said, I want you guys to check out this last clip when it came to the Power Roundtable.
The roundtable's here. Former DNC chair Donna Brazile, former RNC chair and Trump White House chief of staff Reince Priebus, Politico Capitol Hill bureau chief and senior Washington columnist Rachel Bade, and National Review editor Ramesh Ponnuru. So, Don, I got to start with you with these. We talked to Rick Klein about this extraordinary analysis by the New York Times showing that the Democrats have just lost registered voters in pretty incredible numbers, more than 2 million gone over the last 2 years, and Republicans gaining about the same amount in the same time period.
Absolutely. And look, independents have also grown in their popularity. The Democratic Party has outsourced so many of its functions to third-party organizations that did not produce the kind of registration number. This is a wake-up call, clearly, as Democrats gather starting tomorrow in Minnesota, where we're going to have to figure out what is the road forward. We have to do the basic things, but we also have to be prepared to do what Gavin Newsom is now urging Democrats of all different persuasions: fight back, punch harder.
Oh,
Because if
heck
we're
no.
going to
You listen to that guy, you really ain't gonna win. Oh, she definitely ain't right. They ain't never gonna be right.
regain the Congress
They
and
ain't
get
gonna be
ready for
right.
the White House, Democrats are going to have to come up with a
Boy.
different playbook.
Let me stick with you on this for a second. We're going to
Fight
get to
back.
Gavin
What are you
Newsom
fighting?
in a second.
The things
but-
that you destroyed?
But substantively, this happened while the Democrats controlled the White House, controlled the Congress. What did they? I mean, there's got to be a substantive problem here, not just tactical different organizations. What substantively went wrong?
I don't think you want to allow me to devote all of my time to what happened. But like I said, it was outsourced. This was outsourced to third-party organizations. There was no one focused on taking care, feeding what I call mainstream everyday Democrats. And also when you have a party that is focusing on 6 or 7 battleground states, you're missing the moment. So it is a wake-up call. I knew long before that study came out that we were having a problem with registration, especially with young people and, of course, people of color.
Well,
There
first
she
of all,
go
as
with these
Donna
people of
knows, the
color.
most important thing in winning elections, number one, to know where your voters are at. And then the strongest indicator for that is voter registration. They're getting trampled in all 30 states, every battleground state.
All 30. We have 50 now.
Right, but there's only 30 that you can track
Thank
with
you.
voter
Good point.
registration.
Correct.
Sorry.
In the other 20.
Yeah, this is like natural for Donna. You can track it in 30.
Yeah, right.
But the bigger problem is, and the elephant in the room here is that the Democrats are on the wrong side of normal. The people, they're out of step with the norms of society. It's so bad that the Democrats this week put out a memo, and they listed 45 things that Democrats shouldn't say. It's all therapy speak and explaining away
Memo from who
crime.
now? Memo from who?
Third way.
Third way.
Third way. Yeah.
And
So-
it's all because it's not a matter of they can't put people on the doors and register people. That's all that is. It's that they're putting people on the doors. They're trying to win voter registrations. There are state parties, county parties, district parties, and they can't sell it because it's not normal. People don't want it.
Okay, so but Rachel, what I found interesting about this is that the Republican gains in registration are virtually everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, it's red states, it's blue states.
across demographics.
And this happened, again, while Biden was president. This happened over largely the last 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think Reince is right. I mean, a lot of voters think Democrats are out of touch. They think it's a party of the sort of elites, that they are sort of focused on political correctness. And there's a fracturing, too, in the American public where a lot of voters are uncomfortable with the party and its sort of move left economically as well, sort of the populist wing of the Democratic Party. But then a lot of Democrats want to see a movement further left in terms of economics. So, I mean, the party has a real problem right now. They move further left. They might sort of energize their base, which, shows up to vote, they donate, et cetera, but then they alienate a bunch of centrist voters. And that's a lot of Americans who frankly feel like they're moving the wrong direction.
All right. So the truth is the Democratic Party isn't one party anymore. It's a coalition at war with itself. On one side, you have the loud, energetic, progressive wing. On the other side, you have the old, entrenched establishment that seems totally unable to adapt. And I mean, take a look at the leadership. You have the House leader who we just seen, Hakeem Jeffries, discount Obama, as I like to call him, out there pushing this new slogan, a strong floor and no ceiling. Okay, but at the exact same time, you have one of the rising stars of the party's base, a Democratic Socialist from New York named Zohran Mamdani, who literally campaigns on a ceiling. He says billionaires shouldn't exist. That is by definition a ceiling. So you have the leader of the party saying no ceiling while the energy of the party is demanding one. And Jeffries can't even denounce the guy. And the conflict is paralyzing them. And the progressive base wants radical change, but the moderates are terrified of scaring off swing voters. And the result is completely muddled, a muddled message, and they're being pulled in two opposite directions at once, and they can't articulate a clear vision because they're too busy fighting each other. And this isn't a sideshow. It's the main reason they can't fix the problems that are driving voters away in the first place. So what is the brutal truth that liberal hosts and Democratic leaders are finally being forced to face? It's that the ground has shifted right under their feet, and it's the realization that their dream of a permanent majority was a total fantasy and a major political realignment is already there. So the truth is that you can't build a party by ignoring the economic pain of working families. You can't dismiss real concerns about the border and crime and expect people to just keep voting for you. And you can't take entire groups of voters for granted and assume you own their vote forever. And you cannot govern from inside the echo chamber and listening only to the loudest activists while ignoring the common sense of the American people, like a L. Sharpton, who's supposed to be a pastor so far. But that's the thing right there. And the stunned looks on their faces, like hers, of these news hosts aren't just about one bad election. They are the delayed reaction to a crisis that's been building for years. And the voter exodus isn't a talking point, it's statistically reality. And it's so bad that even the outlets that ignored it are now forced to talk about it. And the Democratic Party is at a crossroads and is facing a crisis of identity, a fractured coalition, and a massive disconnect from the priorities of normal Americans. And the brutal truth is that the bill for ignoring reality is finally coming due. And the political and media establishment seems to be the very last to have figured it out. And let me know in the comments what you think the single biggest reason is for the massive shift we're seeing. And I read as many of your comments as I can. And if you find this analysis valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.